right, welcome everybody. Hampshire Capital's webcast podcast. Shane Carter here with me, Eddie Austin. As always, how you doing, Eddie?
Doing great, man.
All right, awesome.
Down here in Dallas, looking at a few deals and doing some asset management today. And maybe, just maybe, might show up for maybe a little investor meetup. You never know.
Hey, all right, I like it. Get out there and meet the good people of Dallas.
That's right.
There's a lot of them. All right, so today's episode, we're going to go over, part of our asset management series, operating expenses, and
Yes.
sort of what do we look at? What are they? What do we look at? How do we see them? And what are some ways that we can tweak, refine, and otherwise limit and monitor our operating expenses and expenditures?
So, because you have a set cost and a variable cost too. So.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you can just 100% pin it down, so let's talk about our variable cost, which would be, insurance could always change, property taxes could change, and then what else could we have change?
Yeah, so we usually break them into controllable and non-controllable, right? So the non-controllables we say are the taxes, insurance, and property management fees. Because we don't control them. In Texas, we fight them. We fight our taxes. We obviously fight to keep our insurance costs as low as we can, and we carefully negotiate with our property management firms relative to their fees. But effectively, we've gotten all of those as low as we can. We can't really control the nominal increases that happen over time. So really, it's the controllable expenses where we spend most of our time trying to control what we can within those line items.
Let's just start from the top. So let's just say if an operator is like looking at a T12, let's start at the very top of that, just at high level. So the very first thing you're probably going to see is probably a market or a gross potential rent, and then you're probably going to have a scheduled rent, right? And then from there, you might have maybe a RUBS program. Maybe you've got some policies in place where you're going through and you're adding more money to that rent from there. And then,
your other income, laundry income, parking, pet fees, all that. Yeah.
Yep. So that's going to be in the very first few little lines. And then from there, hopefully you don't have it, but there's two more bad lines, and they're usually bad debt and concession. So hopefully those lines aren't growing on you, but those are ones to pay attention to. We can dig in on those at another time. But then we start getting into our operational expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And, there is the ones that, like you said, we can control, the ones we can't control. The ones that we can control and the ones that we try to do our best to control them and manage them is, of course, our energy consumption and our cost with that, our water, our gas, sewage, trash, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I know currently I'm working with an auditing company that go in and they take our energy bills and they evaluate these energy bills all the way across the board. And they can kind of also give you a projective because they work with these utility companies, and they can kind of tell you where they're going with that cost. So you may not be able to control it, but you might have an understand of what it could look like in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. And look, let's be honest. Some of these line items, like the water and sewer is usually tied to water consumption. Those are some of your biggest fees. Those are some of your biggest utility expenses. Electricity, that could be a large fee as well. And that's why a lot of folks have RUBS, or rational utility billing system, that allows you to bill the tenants back for their pro rata part of that expenditure. But even still, it's your job as a good building owner, asset manager, and property owner to try to limit the exposure of those expenses as much as possible. And so, water is one of the biggest ones. So look, installing low flow toilets, installing shower heads and fixtures that restrict water flow, using aerators, making sure that there are, drip alarms, right? If there's a pan and there's an alarm that kicks off and shuts off your water automatically when something leaks or is overflowing or something like that. Those are little ways that you can make a big difference when you start installing these toilets and these fixtures on every single unit. You can see massive return on investment savings for that type of capital expenditure. Then you got your electricity, right? You got your common areas, whether or not you're paying for the electricity in your tenant's unit, you're still going to have an electrical bill.
Still got a house meter.
You still got house meters. And so one of the things we always do also is we go through all of the lighting fixtures and we swap them out all for LED fixtures, and we put them on timers, right? And we put them on daylight sensors so that they're not on during the day. And it's one of my pet peeves if I show up at a property, whether it's my own or somebody else's, and you got a big old light on and it's 2:00 in the afternoon and they're just burning money and unnecessarily, right? Especially if it's not an LED fixture. Now you're really burning money. And so all those little things really, really matter. And you have to be diligent on doing every single one of those and checking and inspecting your properties and checking on them and make sure that all those sensors are clean. They don't have overspray. So a classic problem is, electrician comes in, puts in all these nice sensors, puts in these nice LED light packs, and then the painter comes by and they're just spraying paint everywhere and it covers the sensor, and now the sensor doesn't work, and that's how you get that problem, right? So now somebody has to go up there with a rag and a solvent and has to clean that sensor off so that those lights work properly again. So it's all those little things that really add up to keep your expenses down for those controllables.
Yep.
So let's talk about some of the other ones. And it's really sort of your turnover expense, your repairs and maintenance, your contract services, your payroll, your general administrative, and then your marketing and promotional. So let's go one at a time here. So turnover expense, right? In this market, these conditions, you got to limit your turnover expense. You've got to maintain your good resident base whenever possible. Folks who aren't paying and aren't good residents, and you're writing them up all the time, and you're having issues with them, they should probably go anyway, right? Especially if they're not paying, they're going. But everyone else, you should be cultivating a culture and cultivating a property where people want to be there and they don't want to have to move, because moving's a pain in the butt. So people aren't moving unless they feel a serious pain at your property. So make it easy for them to stay.
Let's be honest. The least amount of traffic you can have on your property, as far as refrigerators going in and out or anything like that, is just the more times you move something in and out of a unit, the more times there's going to be a hole knocked in the drywall. It's just expenses. So if you can maintain a good tenant base and just keep your tenants in there to renew, that's what we call by turnover rate. We do not want to turn over that unit to a new renter unless we just need that person out of there. But we try and limit that because what we want is renewals. We want communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then in addition to that, for your turnover expense, you limit that, take care of your residents, be proactive in your lease expirations and have those conversations about retention and resident retention. But then the next one really is your R&M, your repair and maintenance line item. And you want to be careful with this one because you always want to be taking care of your residents. You want to fix problems, right? But what we look at is, in addition to that, and we look at this when we go into the property, we ask the existing staff, like, what are your biggest tickets? Where are you getting all your work orders from? What are some issues that you see, that are constantly coming up? And, if it's Texas and it's been like it's been for the last 4 months, ACs, right? Because it's been 110 for months. And so ACs are a problem. So we go through and we look at, okay, well, what's the average age? What's the life expectancy on these? And should we capitalize to just replace 50% of these because 50% of them are 15 years old? That's really where it makes sense to be proactive and think about, how do I invest dollars intelligently up front and capitalize for something so that it's not hitting my NOI and hitting my operating income, but instead it's a capitalized expense that I've planned for because we have this known issue relative to repairs and maintenance. Yep. You can do the same thing on plumbing, right? Do you have a consistent backflow problem? Are you constantly scoping lines? Are you constantly doing cleanouts? Do you constantly have sheetrock repair because you got a drip in some plumbing valves that are 30 years old that nobody ever took the time to replace? And should you capitalize that up front and go through and proactively take care of all those and cut your work orders in half immediately, right? By doing things the right way and seeing through what the surface issue is to what a true solution is going to be for that matter.
100%, for sure.
And so those are again proactive ways that you can lower your repair and maintenance line items by having preventative maintenance plans too, right? By having solutions that are going to solve a bigger picture rather than just responding to the day-to-day calls that come in from residents.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, as your property manager, does things, suggests, that you want to do some proactive things and be proactive with problems and do some inspections and look at things that could come up. Because what you don't want is a surprise, right? I mean, there's always going to be surprises in this business, but there's a lot of things that you can do for inspection-wise that would help out a tremendous amount to cut down on those surprise expenses.
Yeah.
So managing your costs, you just got to manage it. I think if you manage anything, it's because you're proactive.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So next one is let's go into contract services, right? So it's going to be your landscaping, your maintenance items, anything that the property contracts out that you don't do in-house. And so, what's the thought process there? Well, you just need to be constantly, checking your vendors, right? You might have a vendor that provides you an amazing service at a good price and everything's happy, but you'll get what's called the creep, right? In your renewals, or you start seeing some additional costs that you don't understand. And either way, it's just good to continuously have relationships with other vendors and be shopping for them and use your portfolio. So once you get a couple thousand units like we have, and obviously we're intending to get a lot more, as you have more buying power in a region or in a city, now you can really use that as a negotiation tool with vendors because they really want your business. They're like, oh man, I'd love to take over 2,000 units or 57 acres of property to maintain. That would be amazing across 4 assets. And so it's important to continuously check your vendors in terms of pricing, right? And stay up with them in terms of their scope and what they're doing, and are we pleased with how the landscaping's looking, and are these guys showing up, and is everything done according to what we intend for that scope of work. So that's just an important part of active asset management and continuously looking to make sure we're getting the best price for the best product.
Absolutely.
Now the next few are they're difficult. They've been difficult, right? Your G&A, your general administrative, and then your payroll. It's been a tough labor market. People are the most important asset you have at your properties. You want to treat them well, and you want to make sure that they're properly compensated. So to me, this has been one of the more challenging line items to try to whittle down, if you will, over the last year. Because if you have good people, you got to pay them good, and you got to take care of them, and that costs money. And if you don't, if you're constantly trying to go to the low cost option of saying, hey, you know what, we're not going to pay you $25 an hour. I got a guy over here who'll do it for 21. Yeah, you're going to save money on your books, but you might end up costing yourself a lot more money in terms of headaches and turnover expense, and you're just having a property that's not properly staffed, right? I mean, we've been through that, Eddie. It's no fun if you're supposed to have 4 in, 4 out, and you've only got 3 in and 2 out. It's just no fun, right? You're just not getting it done. So I don't know if you have any insights on the payroll thing, but I'm not quite sure how to manage that one these days, other than do the right thing by your people.
No, I think that it also resonates to your contractors too. I mean, that goes across the board. When you're trying to really cut the dollars on contractors, there comes to a certain point you're going to have a contractor who's not going to show up on Friday because they're not that professional. Because you just are not paying a professional cost per se. So the money wise goes across the board. If you pay people for a professional service, you'll get a professional person.
Yeah.
And it really goes all the way to the roots with that, with your people that are doing your daily management, your contractors, your subcontractors, all of that, all the way across the board. You got to pay, you have to get the right people, and to get the right people, you have to pay them a professional amount.
That's right.
And yeah, there is a thing where with contractors, yes, they're probably going to be way over the top. And maybe you don't need that AA plus rated contractor yet, but it's just something you need to always be cognizant of. You need to manage it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If people aren't showing up, you need to ask what you're paying them.
Yep. And maybe on the payroll thing, maybe that's what it is just being in tune with your staff too, and understanding, do you really need two porters, or can you have one just go to a part-time status, right? Can you have one just work, Saturdays, Mondays, and Fridays when it's just the kind of worst accumulation, and you really got to get after the property at those times. So there are some things you can do like that. But in general, for the folks who show up every day and care about your property, work on your property, the employees at the site level, in my experience right now, especially, it's important to just take care of them and have the right people.
This may be a really good time and place to insert this too. And if my podcast listeners right now are the owner group or people that want to be in the owner group of this, one of the best things you can do is, I know a lot of people I've talked to, they feel like that you get this property management company and then it's just a hands-off investment. It's never going to be a hands-off investment.
Never.
You don't want it to be a hands-off investment.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be involved. You're going to learn by being involved. You're going to be constantly up to the skill set that you're going to need to have to manage the changes in the waters that's coming. And then at the same time, you want to have that relationship with your property management company, with your vendors, to constantly be involved. So they know that you're around. They know that you're watching out. And it's just a really good way to just continuously work with all your people. So I don't want anybody to ever think by listening to these podcasts, why listen to these podcasts and I could be a hands-off manager? You probably listen to these podcasts by now and you're like, these guys are really involved. Because we are. We have to be.
You have to be. Absolutely, man. No, great point. I hope people really, take that away as a message that it takes really active asset management, especially in these times, right? Yeah. There's no more market natural appreciation. It is all about blocking, tackling, and doing the right things in your business every day to move the needle to profitability and driving NOI growth. So.
Yeah. And I think one last thing I want to say, because this was actually a Facebook message on my actual personal account, that I had a person reach out to me and they were asking if we were the owner group or the investment group. And I said, well, we're the owner group. And they had made the comment, uneducated comment, well, you're the only ones making money. So I want to real quickly, just from a high level, I want to address that. And when it comes to, investments, we have Class A and Class B, and, we're the Class B. And, the only person that ever makes money is the person that has a senior debt. So your bank, they're making the money. We have to pay them. And then our people involved, our contractors that keep the property going, they have to be paid. But anything above that, our investors get paid.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody, again, in the owners group, people wanting to be in the owners group, they're thinking we're the only ones making money. That's not the case.
Mm-mm. No, we generally, we usually don't get paid really anything of profit until after our investors are paid.
Exactly.
And I think in general, it's something like 80 or 85% of our total compensation comes at the waterfall event and in an exit refi event, which is always, we don't get our money until after our investors get made whole in their returns. So, that's absolutely true. And the acquisition fees and the asset management fees and that's just going into our overhead. That just pays payroll, right?
Yeah.
So,
sure.
We don't actually make money until we're successful. Yeah.
So
hey, great point on that. Kind of tying up the OpEx, ratio matters. I think we hit all the main points. I don't think there's anything else that I would add in terms of, how to but maybe just on the non-controllables, again, the taxes, insurance, again, it pays to be proactive, right? And have those proactive conversations with your insurance advisor, with your tax advisors. We're dealing with litigation right now in Dallas on an asset, and thank goodness that we were proactive on that and got that going ahead of time so that we can hit it before the taxes are due in January. But it's real money, hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes in taxes that it'll swing, which, as you know, that really affects your NOI tremendously.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, we can do a whole other episode on insurance, right? Because that's a whole other wormhole of something that's gone a little haywire here in the last 18 months or so in terms of costs. But are there ways to actually drive that cost down, right, and be intelligent with that expenditure as well? We'll go into that in another episode.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway here is just manage your asset. Just manage everything, manage expenses, be proactive. Just like Shane said about the taxes, we would probably be looking at a much different scenario if we had not have been proactive the day one we got our tax bill. We immediately went after it. We immediately got people involved to try and manage the outcome, because the outcome could be very bad.
Yeah.
It's the same as when you got insurance renewals coming up. Don't wait until renewal time to look at it and go, oh, this sucks. Actually get in there and ask your insurance advisors and ask the right people. Get some different quotes and just check it. If you can save some money, save some money.
Absolutely. That's the name of the game.
Money, everybody gets more money.
That's right. Property's worth more money. Everybody gets more money that way.
That's right.
All right, buddy. Well, thank you so much. A great episode as always, and we'll definitely see you on the next one.
Absolutely.